In this video, we'll be discussing the concepts of verbal aspect, tense, and action sat, which are related to Koine Greek verbs, and explaining it in the framework of grammatical semantics and pragmatics. Verbal aspect is the author or speaker's subjective viewpoint of the action, event, or state. There are two aspects: the perfective aspect, which is the view of the action, event, or state from the outside, with focus on the whole action from beginning to end, without reference to its internal structure. The imperfective aspect is the view of the action, event, or state from the inside, with a focus on its internal structure, without reference to the beginning or end of the action. For example, in the perfective aspect we have, I walked down the street, a man talked to me. But in the imperfective aspect we have, I was walking down the street when a man began talking to me. Both examples describe the same event but in a different way. When using the perfective aspect, the actions are portrayed as a whole, but when using the imperfective aspect, the actions are portrayed as they are unfolding. Verbal aspect is a subjective choice. Neither choice affects what actually happened, but they simply reflect how the author or speaker wants to tell the story. Every verb, depending on its tense form, will have a particular aspect, either perfective or imperfective, which we will see later. We now need to make a distinction between tense and tense form. We'll start with tense form. In Greek, there are 7 morphological tense forms, morphological meaning in the way the Greek word is spelt and constructed. These tense forms are the present, future, imperfect, aorist, perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. However, there are only 3 tenses from a grammatical temporal point of view, or time. As in English, these are past, present, and future. But we can't simply map a tense form to a particular tense, as certain tense forms can be used in different tenses. For example, the present tense form can be used in the present tense, simply, I am speaking to you. But it can also be used in the past tense, even in English. Suppose I am retelling a story about something someone said to me, and then he says to me. Another example is the perfect tense form, which refers to both the past and the present tense, as it is a completed action in the past that has an impact on the present state. So aspect and tense are not the whole story when talking about verbs and how they are used. We need more describing power. This brings us to action sat. Action sat is a German word and means the type of action and describes how an action takes place. Different grammarians categorize action sats differently. One way of categorizing action sat is in 3 categories: particular if the action is a once-off instantaneous event, iterative if the action was repeated over and over, or ingressive if the action focuses on the beginning. So to recap, aspect is how the action is viewed, but action sat is how the action actually takes place. For example, death reigned from the time of Adam to Moses. Here the aspect is perfective as it gives an external viewpoint, but the action sat is iterative as it describes an ongoing expansive event over many years. I will now put it all together using the definitions of semantics and pragmatics. Semantics refer to the values that are encoded in the verbal tense form. These values are unchanging and uncancelable. Aspect is a semantic value of a verb. If the tense form is aorist, it will have a perfective aspect, but all other tense forms have an imperfective aspect. Now, pragmatics is the expression of the semantic values in context and in combination with other factors. In other words, it is the way language is used in context. Pragmatic values can change from context to context, and action sat is a pragmatic value of a verb. So now, to recap and put everything together, we start off with the verb and its tense form, which will indicate its aspect, how the action is viewed, either perfective or imperfective. This is a semantic value. We then add the lexical item, which is the type of verb, and the context of situation and context of culture, which then produces the action sat, the type of action. These are pragmatic values. Now lastly, a couple more examples. We've already seen the first example, so I'll start with the second one. The word became flesh. Here the verb became is in the aorist tense form, which means it has a perfective aspect. its action start is ingressive as it stresses the beginning of the action. In the next example, they kept coming to him and kept saying to him, "Hail, King of the Jews." Here, kept coming and kept saying are in the imperfect tense form. Imperfect tense form, which means it has an imperfective aspect. Its action start is iterative as it emphasizes the repetition of actions. And lastly, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. Now you might think the verb began to teach is perfective in aspect as it makes reference to the start of the action. But in Greek it is in the imperfect tense form, and so it is imperfective in aspect. But when used in the context of the narrative, its action start is ingressive, and so the English translators of this text have made the decision to translate it as began to teach rather than was teaching. Thanks for listening.